Hello, and welcome to another episode of Consultants Corner. In today's new era where collaboration and partnership is becoming more prevalent and important, it is our belief that an open narrative and sharing of ideas is absolutely vital. The industry possesses exceptional operators, consultants, and contractors, and our aim is to bring greater insights which can often lie hidden away. I'm Maxine Crow, your host, and I'm joined by Kat, our co-host. Hi, Kat.
Hi, everyone.
And I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our guest today, Glenn Campbell from Cohesion. Glenn, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you, Maxine. Not nervous at all in any way, shape, or form, you lied. But yes, I'm very good, thank you. And genuinely delighted to be here on this call with you both. Feel very privileged, so thank you for inviting me.
That's brilliant. So just for our audience today, we are going to go through a few questions. We will be gentle with you, I promise. Well, actually, I can't promise, but
you can speak for yourself.
I'm gonna start asking some questions, and then Kat will pick up on the latter ones. So to start off with, please tell us about yourself and your career.
Well, I'm Glenn Campbell, founder of Cohesion Consulting. I'm one of the few Sagittarian-only children that you'll have on these interviews, so this could be fun. Never too serious. Long story short, from a wee town called Hoyk, just south of Edinburgh in the Scottish borders. My career is honestly a happenstance of events. Left school having flunked out of it. Long story short, doing really well at school. Then I got to the exams. They went really well. Every single question was, what's 2 + 2, Glenn? And of course, the answer was 5. No idea what I was thinking. Needless to say, that didn't go well at school. So ended up responding to an advert in the job centre as it was back in the 80s. Can't believe it's the 80s. Anyway, and then ended up working in a small hotel up in Cumbria, left home with a suitcase and 20 quid. That was it. Off I went. Ended up working in hotels and restaurants. Was very lucky to be offered a job at the Outward Bound School at Ullswater by a wonderful chap called Bob Lomax. Commis chef, just worked my way through the kitchen, worked my way up through the brigade, had a wonderful time doing some great food and working in the outdoors, which I absolutely adored. Then ended up through a number of different roles, working out in Canada, came back to the UK, then went to do a degree at University of Gloucestershire, had a lovely time doing that. Then I joined Gardner Merchant as a graduate trainee, working for John Hughes, Ops Director, who's a wonderful man and a really good mentor. Then Michelle Philpott, Divisional Director, and the wonderful Kathy Budd as Divisional Director, who I'm still in touch with now. Surprised she's still speaking to me, to be honest, but that's all good news. Grateful as I am for the guidance. I've moved on from a number of companies, from Ops Director roles, Client Relations Director roles, working across business and industry, independent schools, state schools, even care homes, which I've really enjoyed. And it's been a real blast. And then all of a sudden, 16 years after all that was busy with, ended up going into consultancy. A wonderful gentleman called Mike Pullman. I was working with him for a while. He very sadly passed away early 2020. And then I thought, you know what, maybe it's later than you think. And maybe it's a good time to think about something else. And that's where the real thought stream for Cohesion came from. It's very much founded on the basis. If you look at Einstein, one of his great quotes is, only a life lived for others is a life worthwhile. And that really resonates with me in terms of a moral purpose to a business. I don't really care about EBITDA or profit or margins. I manage it as part of the business, but I care about the service, the support for clients. And as it's procurement now, it's contractors. The business is founded on a very strong personal belief that there should be a strong tripartite relationship between clients, contractors, and consultants. The three of us need to work together effectively in the main to deliver good outcomes for both the client and for the contractor. And that's been the core driver for the company moving forward so far. So yeah, from the 80s to here, I can't believe it. I think there's a comment about, what was it, Generation X. It was the first generation to turn 30 at 10. It's the first generation to be feeling 30 at 50. And that makes sense to me.
Yeah, 50 is the new 30, by the way. I hope did you not know that?
Well, my IQ is very close to that, so yeah, we should be fine with that
too. Okay, thank you for sharing your history with us. So, what are the highlights of your role as a consultant?
Oh, constant stress and pressure. Probably the wrong answer. I think it's all about customer experience at the end of the day, and I view clients and contractors as customers. It's the best way to view things, in my humble opinion. For me, it's all about the client and the outcomes that they require. I specialize in education. I just love working in schools, SLT, trusts. You got some most incredible leaders that I'm lucky enough to work alongside. So for me, it's all about them. That means it's all about the children and the students at the schools. Also, I think that working with contractors, I set out to be the consultant I wanted 25 years ago. There's been some really good experiences all the way through my career, and I'm trying to bring the benefit of that experience to what I do now. I think the most satisfying thing I've been doing in recent years, probably the past 30, to be honest. The Mayor of Tower Hamlets put forward an initiative to feed every Key Stage 3 and 4 student in Tower Hamlets. There's 37,000 students in Tower Hamlets, and 47% of them are on the poverty line. So there's some challenging times there. Working as part of the project board, myself and a colleague, Aidan, we've been able to introduce a methodology for how kitchens can deliver more meals to more students. And that project started in September. And I quite like, there's a romantic notion that it's quite nice to affect and impact the lives of students that will never know me, don't know who I am, I don't really matter. But I believe that every student should get a good meal every day at school. Good nutrition equals good educational attainment. Good educational attainment means better life chances and getting out of that 47% in poverty to a better life. So that's been the most satisfying thing I honestly think I've ever done. And now we're working with Southwark Council. They've got a universal credit free school meal project, and we're helping them launch that as well through the borough. And as you know, Maxine, I've had a fun day in Southwark today. So yeah, it's been good. But yeah, I just think that it's good fun, really enjoy the job, and it's nice to do good things for good people. Can't ask for more than that.
Yeah, just a question around the provision of the meals, and when we had COVID in the schools had shut down, how did you have a role in supporting the schools during those periods as well, and the operators and the contractors?
Yes, that's where I think it was a very stressful time. Schools, I think, became default carers for children over that time, rightly or wrongly, personal opinion. And I think contractors had a nightmare because most contracts have got a snow day clause where if you close for a couple of days, they can claim some margin back. We didn't expect schools to shut for a long period of time. The population was either at home, learning remotely, or limited groups. There was a huge amount of work to do to try and keep contractors calm, schools in one piece, and broker sensible solutions to the challenges that both had. Most of it wasn't really operational. A lot of it was financial. So yes, that was an incredibly busy time. I grew to love Zoom and Teams. I've got to be honest with you. Everything was online. I even helped on a tender for a trusted 28 schools remotely during COVID. That was fun. So I think it's been an interesting time for schools at that point. A lot of learnings have come into the sector on when contracts come out of the drawer and get used in anger, how to resolve conflict, how to mediate. And that's definitely a stay off the coffee Glen kind of day. And I think now moving forward, a lot of schools haven't quite recovered yet. The current year 7 intake in this year have a disruption all the way through the primary school years. They've not had normal meal experiences. Years 8 through 10 are quite used to grab and go. They've become big fans of Mackie D's, Nando's, snacky handheld items versus formal sit-down dining. So that's been a long-term trend that still hasn't excised itself yet. And a lot of schools, say you've got 1,000 students on site, they might have 250 seats in the restaurant, and they've got 40 minutes for morning, well, for the lunchtime, or 20 minutes for morning break. You cannot feed all the students in a school. There just isn't the space. That's part of the challenge, I think, with Tower Hamlets and Southwark now, and it's a problem in every school because they just don't have the capacity. So I think there's a number of operational issues that schools face. All we try and do is navigate the middle ground between Silla and Charybdis and just try and get a fair balance on feeding as many students as we can.
Yeah. I mean, it does bring me on to the next question around what are the challenges and how do you address them? So what other challenges do you have as a consultant?
Gosh, yeah, just a couple. I think the main one is actually the business itself, to be perfectly honest. I think, I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time working in the business. That precludes working on it. So it means that developing the business, evolving processes, professional development, all that stuff becomes a lot harder. Luckily, I do enjoy what I do. In fact, I just love it. So I don't mind the weekends and evenings catching up on all the bits for Cohesion, which is fun. I really enjoy that. And I think for me, the business is a journey. I don't want to sound twee at all, but it's pretty much a 5-year plan to take it from when it started about 1.5 years ago to where it's going to be. So I'm loving that. It's so much fun. I think the other thing that I tend to worry about in challenges is for my clients. They've got a lot of pressures themselves. Budgets are really under pressure. Schools are incredibly busy. Episode today indicates that just one little thing can cause issues. So I do worry about clients, in fairness, because they're just wonderful people trying to do the best they can. And actually, and that sounds odd for a consultant, but I worry about contractors too. It is a tough old market there. I do soft services in particular. So worrying about how we can make sure that interests are working, that contracts are profitable and viable, and the service levels remain high is always a constant challenge. And of course, the market is shifting. If you look at cleaning contracts, for example, the amount of interest in a cleaning tender in the past 2 years has more than doubled. It's way more competitive. That's good for clients because there's a much bigger pool of contractors to try and choose from at a procurement. But it's very, very difficult for everyone because it's just got way more competitive all of a sudden. So the good thing is I enjoy that. So I don't mind.
A question a little bit off topic, but is there any funny story behind the name Cohesion?
Unfortunately not, no. The name of the business really comes from how I operate. I believe in this strong tripartite relationship between the client, contractor, consultant. My view is that a cohesive methodology is entirely appropriate. So I think with Cohesion, it's the name on the tin. It's very much focused upon working well with clients and contractors. So that's pretty much where the business name came from.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to switch it up a little bit now and focus on sustainability. So that there have been a number of colourful debates around sustainability, and how important do you feel that it is truly today?
I think sustainability is more important for the next century. We're talking grandchildren's children, grandchildren's grandchildren. There's a lot of strong views on both sides of the argument with the climate crisis. I'm very much on the fact that Earth is trying to tell us something and we're not really listening. So I think the sustainability argument is absolutely essential. We cannot continue consuming at this rate. I think that it's very much going to be a key factor in procurement, as you well know. Things like the ULEZ zone, for example, expanding may be really frustrating for a lot of individuals in London, but I'm a chronic asthmatic, had it my whole life. Sounds odd, but I do not take breathing for granted. It's only when you can't breathe that you realize how important it is. And yet there's 9,400 premature deaths attributed to air pollution. So we've got to make a change in terms of how we manage sustainability, how we manage our ESG programs, but the country hasn't necessarily caught up enough on the infrastructure to support that. Recycling depends on the barrier in, it's a lottery. Trying to get an EV is wonderful, no emissions, but how many charges are there? So there's all these issues that we're facing, but I think it's absolutely mission critical. And what I'm delighted at is students in school are taking a really, really strong view on that in terms of no disposables, trying to have plates and cutlery, all that good stuff as well. So yeah, I think that it's important now, but it's just going to get even more important in the future.
So do you think it's also equally important for your clients?
Absolutely, yes. I work in education, which I love. It's often said that they're the future, and they are, because let's face it, none of us are here forever. So at the end of the day, clients are taking it incredibly seriously. There's a strong focus on environmental working groups. We try and engage with them through procurement to get them involved, even talking about cleaning chemicals in toilet roll. I know it sounds really bizarre, but it's getting an interest in what we actually consume, what we use, and any differences that we can make. So yes, it's gaining real critical mass now, I think. If we say that it's, say, 10 out of 20 in terms of engagement now, I think it'll be at 20 out of 20 in a couple of years' time.
I think it's a personal matter now. It matters to each one of us individually. We care about it, we talk about it, we act wherever we can, and we try to control those things that they could have an impact. Okay.
Absolutely right, yes.
I'll move on to the next question. What do you consider to be the future trends in the industry, and how can we prepare for change?
Oh, gosh. Well, change is a constant, as we know. Things are getting interesting in the sector. I think there's a lot of conversation about AI, Skynet, whatever people are worried about these days. I think that it'll certainly make a contribution, and everyone's worried about AI. I don't think that's a problem. It's the people using it that we need to worry about. I think that technology has come a long way in the past 30, 40 years. When I was at school, it was the BBC Micros. They were really whizzy. And now things are so much more, showing my age, you can tell. So much more advancement that we're seeing. I think that it's about using the technology for a practical purpose rather than creating technology for its own sake. So technology aside, we've got the procurement bill coming through, which affects public sector procurement from October 2024, streamlining processes. I think that's a really good intervention. Interestingly, it's a distraction away from Europe because most of our procurement law is based on European procurement law. This is the first intervention for British law, which is really exciting, really interesting. As we said earlier, Maxine, education has changed. The COVID changed schools. The situation that we're in now with funding crises ultimately is changing them as well. So I feel there's going to be increasing pressures. The rack crisis on crumbling concrete. Head teachers get sent a questionnaire from the DFE, which is fine, saying scratch this with a pen and see if it crumbles or not. Head teachers are amazing people, but they're not structural engineers, and neither am I. So a lot of these crises are making life harder. Ofsted isn't helping them either. So I think there will be a shift away from constant pressure, perhaps. The competition, as I said earlier, much more interest in tenders, much more competitive market. It will be a Darwinian selection. Some companies will fail, some will grow, some will merge. We saw that last week with more mergers as well, with Paddington going. So I think that competition benefits clients. I think ESG, as you're saying, Kat, will become much more of a focus, along with healthy eating. If we take a look at councils in London, they're banning adverts for junk food or fizzy drinks because the obesity crisis in children is getting worse. If you look at tooth decay in children, it's been getting worse for the past 40 years. There's a huge amount of change necessary. And whilst, again, these grey hairs don't necessarily help, I do remember turkey Twizzlers. Never even tried one myself. So I feel that the focus on healthy eating is where we're going to have to go in terms of a lifestyle choice. So yeah, I think there's a huge amount of change coming up. And all we have to do is have an open mind and embrace it, because it's going to happen whether we like it or not.
Rightly said. Can you give the audience your top 3 recipes for success working with clients?
Oh, gosh. So the first one is put the client's interest first. Second one is where everyone else's hats all times, all the time. You've got to have a number of different perspectives. I don't just think as me, I think as my client, the consultant, think about the contractor, think about what the students are viewing. It's about customer experience, clean school, well-fed students. And the third thing, I think, is, as I said to Maxine earlier, we have to remember that we all need each other. We do not exist in isolation. We cannot work effectively individually. And I think that we need to remember that integrity is not optional.
Very good. I like your top 3. How would you like to see the sector evolve and change? I know you touched on it earlier about the need for change. Change is coming and we cannot really control it. What about the industry? What do you think is going to be the next thing that is going to evolve it?
Okay, a couple of bits. I think in terms of consultancy itself as a discipline, it's real fun to work in, but there's not really a unified or single body that consultants are part of. You've got Hospitality Network, which Simon has been running. It's a wonderful initiative. You've got the Food Service Consultants International. There's Institute of Consulting. There's a number of bodies that exist, but there isn't a body that controls all of it. We've got legislation with the public contract regulations, then the procurement bill. I think it would be very good to have a framework or an established methodology for consultancy moving forward. Because when you think about it, you've had some outstanding consultants on these sessions, and with respect, I don't include myself on that, with huge experience, huge knowledge, very capable individuals, and you've got more still to come, Nottingham Vic Laws. So I feel that the consultancy sector, anybody can basically set up on a fag packet and start a business overnight. It's very easy to do that, but to do consultancy well is not easy, as you well know, Maxine. It's very difficult. It's being a diplomat and being a gumboot diplomat at different points in time. Depends on the objective and the problem you have. So I think that would be very useful in terms of the sector. And I think in terms of education, I think most problems can be solved with adequate funding, to be perfectly honest. In terms of the contractors, post-COVID, wow, it's been the Wild West. There's a huge amount of acquisition activity right now, which is always good for the market. That means new contractors can come in. There's been quite a new startups over the past couple of years, which I think is really exciting. So I feel that the sector is going to continually evolve and change. And I'm quite looking forward to seeing how that goes.
So you think it's going to the right direction?
I do think, yes. I think that necessity is the mother of invention. COVID created a number of challenges. Some businesses did not survive that. Many did. Everyone's come out of that smaller, faster, smarter, more agile, way more dynamic. Home working. 5 years ago, who'd have thought home working was a thing? Didn't exist then. Whereas my view is I've got a home office, I've got office in Tunbridge Wells where I'm based as well, but I get way more done first thing in the morning if I don't have to get up, get out and go to the office. I can get up, get my coffee and get cracking. So all those changes are I know it's bandied about a lot, it's a real paradigm shift. The world of work has definitely turned up on its head since COVID. I think that it's a really interesting way of working for a lot of standard businesses, but cleaners, chefs, caterers, FM individuals are on site. They can't necessarily work from home in a lot of the roles. But I think that that's going to be a continued development moving forward. And work-life balance is never a bad thing. And as Maxine, you will know, it's hard to get a work-life balance when you run your own business because there's the business and there's not much balance.
Last question for today then. What advice would you give to the new players entering the profession?
Ooh, don't do it. No. I honestly love consultancy, but it's not for everyone. We're all at different points in our personal and professional journeys in life, and it could be a fantastic role for you, but maybe not just right now. I note Simon Esner's wise point on knowing your ability and skills, because when you're in consultancy, you can't just do procurement or stuff. You have to do a lot of different things well or else. So I think Simon's sage comment should be noted by all. It's hard work running your own business. Everything is basically down to you, and that's fine. I quite like that, to be fair. And there's an incredibly sobering reality that if you don't work, you don't eat. And that's what the business is all about. So I think that having the mental strength and the focus to not really worry about that and just get on with the business is important. Everyone thinks consultancy is a walk in the park and it's super easy. You pop in, criticize the salad bar, say the food's pedestrian and go again. It doesn't work like that. You're managing multiple relationships at multiple levels all the time in a constantly shifting environment. I quite like that. I find it really interesting. And it's quite exciting, really. But that's not for everyone. The whole analogy of operators spinning plates, well, you're spinning plates on a 3D chessboard. And that's what consultancy is like. And it takes a lot to get your head around that, I think. I think that if someone's looking at it, I'd suggest to give it a try with a friendly consultant first. Take a look at what the job actually entails. Take a look at the pressures, because running things as a seller on one side of the table is very different to running it as a consultant on the other. So I think that CPD is a challenge. I've mentioned that earlier in terms of continuing development, developing your skills, your knowledge base. We're working in a highly dynamic environment where legislation is constantly changing. 5 years ago, allergens were a bit of a thing. Then they had a massive focus. There's been so much more legislation around that, much more pressures. When I was cooking back in the 80s, that wasn't really there. So there's more administration, more knowledge base required. It's gone way past the dodgy eggs and they've been a curry stage now in terms of managing catering services, cleaning services, the chemicals, cobotics has been such an evolution. So I think consultancy is good if you don't want to stay in one place for long. That's the most important thing.
Thank you very much, Glenn.
Thank you.
That's been really great. We have actually got some time left. You rattled through those questions. So interesting, because with working with schools, what was do you remember what your school dinners were when you were at school? Being a Scotsman.
Still getting counselling for those. Crikey. Yeah, I think it's imagine prisoner cell blockade in a less friendly environment. Yeah. Yeah, it was all that frozen Macedonia vegetables that were cooked in a steamer for about 14 years using weapons-grade plutonium to cook them with. No, I'd much rather not. I take a look at those as a good example of maybe going hungry isn't a bad idea. And yeah, it just wasn't a good environment. You know, with respect, I was a free school meals kid, came from a fairly humble background. Nothing worse than having the token across the counter or your name on a list, okay? And my mother ended up taking me out of school for lunch and sent me to my grandmother's. Bless her, she was an amazing lady, but the food was actually worse. But anyway, so I think the experience it gave me, I didn't realize that I love fish, for example. I hated it at school, but again, they've been using the same steamer and weapons-grade plutonium to cook that for a number of months. So it's only when I became a chef that I thought, actually, fish is really great. So it was a really good lesson for me in how not to serve students food, what not to serve them either, and to think about students as customers that have got feelings. A lot of those students, as we're knowing now, haven't had breakfast. and you can't learn well if you're starving. That's the bottom line here. So I think that my experience of free school meals was actually invaluable, but I suspect the Geneva Convention has a word to say about that. So yeah, let's just leave that go.
Okay.
I'm surprised. In Greece, we don't actually get fed at school. You have to have your own lunch. Yeah.
Tell us.
You have to have your own lunch, or you have to go to a little shop and buy something, a grab and go solution. But we didn't really have meals cooked for us. It's just not a thing, unless if you're in a private school.
Did you have breakfast?
I did at home, not at school. I was forced to drink the milk and have the porridge.
Oh gosh,
that sounds familiar.
So for me, I'm one of 8, and I remember, well, there's 6 of us that grew up in the same home, and I just remember those days of do you remember the old Ready Break advert when the kid with the duffel coat and he's going to school with that heat beam around? Yeah, that was us. My mum was convinced that Ready Break that was our thing. But no, we had the little tickets, and I'll never forget my favourite school dinner. This is gonna be gross. It was cheese pie with beans, chips, and gravy.
Classic. Classic. Good cheese pie, brilliant.
Cheese pie. I mean, yeah, I know. But Glenn, it's been an absolute pleasure having you with us today. And just for our audience, just to recap, 3 recipes for success. This is testing my memory now, but I've written a bit down. So putting the client's interest first, and looking at different perspectives. So wearing the hat of the consultant, contractor, and operator. I loved what you said about integrity is not optional. I absolutely love that. And just the relationship that you have with schools, and the passion that you have as a consultant, working with schools, working with the clients, and recognizing that yes, technology has its place, but it needs to be used for the right reasons and with purpose. Absolutely love that. So Glenn, any final words from you before we close this episode?
No, not really. I think that it's been a wonderful interview. Really loved having time with you both, and I really am very grateful, as I said again at the start, to be on this. Very much appreciated. And yeah, consultancy is fantastic, but it's not for everyone.
Thank you, Glenn. So this has been Consultants Corner, where we are creating better understanding and insight and changing the industry narrative. Thank you all for listening, and see you again very soon.
Thank you.